Welcome into the In the Money podcast for Saturday, May 13th. Tom Leach along with Jim Goodman, Keeneland's Director of Mutuals and Simulcasting, as we take a look at the late pick four on Saturday, as well as four graded stakes races, two of which are in the pick four. So, Jim, let's start in with the fourth race, which is the Grade 3 Peter Pan, often a prep for the Belmont Stakes. And this one is 3-year-olds going 1 1/8 miles, which is one turn at Belmont. It's a small field, but I thought a very well-matched group. It's not a care. Who did you land on?
I could only really toss one. I think Looking at Blessing is kind of a field filler here for Naira. Take Your Guns on the outside is also a stretch coming off a maiden win. But the other four horses, I could make a case for all of them. Master Plan comes out of the UAE Derby, where he finished behind Thunder Snow, who wound up not having a very good trip to Louisville. Timeline for Chad Brown is Chad's 13 for 31 the Belmont meet, not too shabby, and won by 13.5 last time out. Meantime, for Brian Lynch, won his maiden on a muddy Keeneland course at 4-5, so I think he's making a big step up. But my pick is going to be Impressive Edge for Dale Romans. Impressive Edge ran in the Florida Derby, 7 lengths behind Always Dreaming, but only 2 lengths out of second behind State of Honor and Gunnevera. So he's kept really good company. This is a lot easier spot for him, and Romans ships him to New York. Louis Saez takes the mount back after he did ride him in the swale. So I'm going to take Impressive Edge here, but it's not a huge difference between. Timeline's only raced 2 times, and I'm just thinking that sloppy track at Aqueduct contributed to that 101 buyer. So Impressive Edge on top with Master Plan, Timeline, and Meantime behind him.
I am going to take a little bit of a stretch here, and it's Take Your Guns. And the reason, if you look at the comment line on his last start at Keeneland, it says engulfed foe. And that's what it looked like. I mean, he was just so – I watched that race, and I remember as soon as he hit the wire, I said, I got to put that one in my horses to watch because that's a future stakes winner. I didn't expect him to come back in the Grade 3 Peter Pan, but he's had a couple of sharp works, and he just impressed me so much with the turn of foot, just the explosion in the stretch, that I'm going to take him because if I'm right and he is good enough to win this, then I'm going to get a better price than I would get if he went through an allowance race and then into a stake. So I'm going to take a shot and use it. Impressive Edge was the one that I first wrote down, and I changed to this horse just remembering that performance that I watched at Keeneland. So Impressive Edge, Timeline, and Master Plan are the ones that I'll use with this horse in exactas, and I'll use all 4 in multi-race wagers. It's not in the late pick 4, but if you're doing multi-races, I would take all of these in here. But just I think I'm going to get a good price, so I'm going to take a hunch that Take Your Guns is as good as he looked on that one day. 6th race is the Grade 3 Bogey, mile and 16th on the turf for fillies and mares, and I'm going to try and beat Miss Temple City here and they may scratch her if it comes up wet, I read in the form. But I'm going to try the 2 Chad Brown horses, Decida and Reina de Batteria, and the latter will be the better price, but I think on her best day could be good enough to win this. So I'm just going to play both of those 2 on top, and then in the second line, use those 2 plus Miss Temple City and Time and Motion, and hope that I get Reina de Batteria home first with a little better price. How about you?
Yeah, I don't feel really good picking against Chad Brown, but I'm going to take Miss Temple City. I think she scratched out last week on Derby Day, and she goes to New York, and she's just so tough. Mile and 16th probably isn't her best distance. She's probably better at a mile, but Grand Motion gets them ready. She's got all the back class in the world with multiple Grade 1 wins. She's only raced 1 time at Belmont, and that was early in her career in the Sands Point. Didn't run that well, but she's a lot better now. I'm going to take her against the 2 Chad Brown horses, but I agree with you that either one of those is if you look at their last race, Decida got a little bit the worst trip. So Reina de Pateria probably is the better price. I don't know that they're his best, though, and I think Miss Temple City is a cut above, and I'm going to take her in here at not much of a price, but I think those 3 would cover you in pick 3s, pick 4s.
Go to the 8th race, the Grade 1 Man of War, mile and 3/8 on the turf. Always a well-matched field, it seems like, for this race. Who did you go to in the Man of War?
Well matched, yeah. Out of 8 horses, I've got 5 written down, so that's not too bad. I think it becomes a jockey's race. I think you can make a case for Sadler's Joy, the 1, Wake Forest, the 3. Zakova is interesting. The mare coming over from Ireland hadn't raced over here yet. Patterson Cross, one of your favorite horses, the 6, and Taglib, the 8. I can make a case for all of them. The problem that I came up with in handicaps is there's not any speed. Don't know what Zakova's got from a matter of, I mean, you look at the running lines, and it appears that she's been toward the front, so maybe she will take off. And if she's the only speed in the race with Johnny Velasquez, she might be a pretty good bet because the rest of them like to come from out of it. The one thing I saw with Patterson Cross is that if you go 2 back in the W.L. McKnight at Gulfstream, Lescano got him to the lead, almost to the lead, and finished third, got beat by a length to Glebe. And maybe that's the tactic here. I think all those jockeys are going to be looking at, well, I've got a great come from behind horse, but just like Le Peru stuck in the one hole with Sadler's Joy, he didn't have a choice. He didn't have enough speed to get there, so he's going to have to work out a trip. But I think that possibly Patterson Cross, if he works out a trip, possibly Zakova, the 4, the unknown. But I can make a case for a lot of them. I'm going to use 5 in my pick 4. So my very shaky choice is your horse Patterson Cross.
Yeah, that's who I ended up on too. I just think he's still improving. And I have a hunch that wider course up there, those wider turns, that's going to fit this horse well. 3 works since the last race and been wide in the last 2. It's always all about the trip in these turf races, but this is just an evenly matched group. But I think this 4-year-old could still have a little upside left. So I'm going to key in on Patterson Cross. Sadler's Joy, Wake Forest to Glebe are the other ones I like. I'd use all 4 of those in the late pick 4, which we'll get to in a bit. But one more graded stake to hit, Jim. That's the Grade 2 Ruffian, the 10th race at a mile and small field. Who did you land on?
I came down to 2 horses here, and I thought it was between the filly that's in the best form, which is Highway Star, who won the Distaff Grade 3 last out at Aqueduct at 7 furlongs, stretching out to a mile here. But the one I picked was High Ridge Road, who had a brutal trip in the Grade 1 Madison at Keeneland. Went off as 4-1 or 9-2, I think there. Got beat by Paulo Silver Lining, who really ran a nice race and came back and won again on Oaks Day. So had a terrible start. If you toss that race, she looks really good for Linda Rice coming off those 2 races at Laurel. So I'm going to take High Ridge Road here. But in the pick 4, I'm also going to use Highway Star simply because I can't ignore that good form that she's in. Indulgent for Kerry McLaughlin has a shot, but got beat by Highway Star last out, so I'm going to give the edge to Highway Star there. So I'm going to stick with 2 horses in the pick 4 here, just the horse exiting the Madison at Keeneland and the filly in the best form, Highway Star.
I'm going to take Indulgent here for McLaughlin. I've heard him talk about this horse before, and I think got a real high opinion of this filly from what I recall. And I think can improve off that last start, which was her best effort to this point. I think she can move forward. So I'm going to take her in here. Also use High Ridge Road I liked a lot. I think coming back in a softer spot here, she could run big. Bar of Gold I think's a little bit intriguing too. 2 wins at Belmont's the main thing I like about this horse. So I'm going to throw that one in there as well. The pick 4 starts back in the 8th race. I said I'm going to use the 4 horses out of the Man of War. In the 9th, I'm going to use 5, 8, and 9. Bond Vigilante, Bluegrass Prevails, Curious Cow. No real strong opinion there. I'm going to use just Indulgent and High Ridge Road in the Ruffian. And then in the last race, 4, 5, and 10, the Leave 'em at the Gate, Mission Leader, Bourbon Empire. No real strong opinion among the 3, so couldn't find a single along the way, so I'm 4 by 3 by 2 by 3 on my pick 4 ticket for Saturday at Belmont Park. What about you?
I could not find a single either, but I got a fairly inexpensive $60 ticket going 5 deep in the first leg, the Man of War, with the horses I talked about, Sadler's Joy, the 1, Wake Forest 3, Zakova, the 4, I'm going to throw in there that you're not, Patterson Cross, the 6, and Taglib, the 8. Then the second leg is race 9, 6.5 furlong allowance optional claimer. I'm going to use 4, 5, 9 there. Spooked Out, Bond Vigilante, and Curious Cow. One thing you got to look at this race is loaded with speed, and I think Curious Cow sets up well to come off the pace on the outside. So that would be my top pick in there, the 9 horse. Going to stick with 2 horses in race 10, the Ruffian, Highway Star, the 3, and High Ridge Road, the 1. Last leg, I'm kind of like you. I didn't have a strong opinion. Leave 'em at the Gate, the 4, The Eloquent, the 1, and Bourbon Empire, the 10. So I'm going to go 1, 4, 10 there. So 1, 3, 4, 6, 8 with 4, 5, 9 with 1, 3 with 1, 4, 10 for $60.
All right, let's remind you that there are a couple of other interesting stakes opportunities at Churchill, the Ungraded Unbridled Sydney Turf Sprint, and up at Arlington, 1 Mile Hanshin Cup. And there's a couple of Keeneland horses that come out of those races I think are worth a look. I wrote these two up in my blog for Keeneland Select. Miss Gossip was real impressive, winning an allowance race at Keeneland. She goes into that Unbridled Sydney. And Rated R Superstar had a wide trip all the way around, and I think is much better than that one looked on form, on paper. So keep an eye on that one coming out of a Keeneland allowance race for the Hanshin Cup up at Arlington. And then, Jim, next weekend, not too early to remind folks about getting ready for Preakness weekend, right?
It speaks up on you, that 2-week gap between Derby and Preakness. And we're looking at all the simulcast action at Keeneland will be at Red Mile, and we will have both the main areas for simulcasting and the clubhouse open for public. So if you want to come out there, we got brand new 65-inch TVs. The clubhouse, it is first come, first serve there. So you get there early and get your seats. We'll have burgers and hot dogs over in the clubhouse, and we'll also have some activity outside. Preakness Day is always fun to see if that horse can take a step forward to the Triple Crown possibility. Also, of course, Keeneland Select. You can always bet it on Keeneland Select. You can advance wager on Friday, which is like I had Susan Day at Pimlico, but you can also advance wager the Preakness all day long on Friday and then the Preakness on Saturday.
Best of luck on your wagers, and keep your Keeneland Select accounts fully funded. This is the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.